You're too obsessed with media. Can you recall ever hearing that before? Maybe after a questionably large purchase that you desperately tried to hide the true cost of? Maybe after your buddies catch on that you've been talking about the exact same thing for the last 2 weeks and they say, Jesus, get a room, you two. Nah, I'm just kidding. They just tell you to shut the hell up. And hey, maybe you've said it to yourself as you're crying your eyes out at 11 p.m. wondering how something so blatantly fake can make you feel something so intense and real. I know I felt that last one many times. And as someone who poured 11 months worth of free time into making 5.5 hours of content for my favorite story, yeah, I've had other people call my priorities into question too. So, like any rational adult would, I've decided to tackle this issue by fighting fire with gasoline. Because lately I've been obsessed with the idea of being obsessed with media. Like, what does that mean? Where is the line drawn? And how, if at all, can it be channeled in a healthy way? And when a guy with a YouTube channel gets hooked on an idea, he takes a dump into his hand and uploads it to the internet. Welcome to that. Subscribe if you love doo-doo. Ultimately, I think these questions have slightly different answers for each individual person. There are a myriad of reasons why someone will become obsessed with a piece of media, or even just feel like they are. So in our first trip down memory lane, we're gonna take a look at the why. Then I'm gonna move on to the next point, then I'm gonna come to a nice conclusion, then we're all gonna sing Kumbaya together, and then win the lottery, and then pledge all the winnings to my Patreon. Thank you for doing that, by the way. When I was first getting into manga and didn't know where to start, I did what most people do and just looked up what the best one was. And according to AniList users, it was Berserk. Now, as a huge Souls fan, of course I had heard of the story that my favorite games stole all their ideas from, so I gave it a try without a second thought, and shortly after starting, it happened. I would go, oh wow, this is some fun action. Then damn, this is super compelling. Then Jesus Christ, this is probably the most impactful confrontation I have ever seen. Then I was like, alright, this is fucking disgusting. As it progressed, as more and more perfect moments that would be a crime to spoil for you here piled up, this story became, without question, a 10 out of 10 for me. Nothing compares, and it's not even close. The art, the vivid, beautifully detailed, living, breathing world that commands so much wonder, awe, and terror. The characters, their lovable personalities, and heartfelt dreams. The themes, the fact that over 2 years later, I can still recall in detail everything that happens in the story. I think the only other things of equivalent length I can do that for are Breaking Bad and the Clannad visual novel. This is one of the greatest stories ever told. But unlike something such as Clannad, I wasn't super emotionally attached to it on a personal level, something that typically leads to the word of the day for me. However, whether I knew it or not, something would happen that'd make me wonder if I was obsessed this entire time. I vividly remember where I was on the evening of May 20th, 2021. It was just a few weeks after I caught up to the most recent chapter of Berserk. My friend and I were in a Discord call playing some custom zombies map in Pavlov. It was like a castle area with a bunch of cool weapons. I'll put footage of it up here and you can just use your eyes. Unless of course you're listening to this while trying to fall asleep, in which case, hey. Nightmare, 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 nightmare. Yeah, sorry, I'm stalling because this next part kinda sucks to talk about. So while we were playing, another friend of mine who had read Berserk in high school and was ecstatic to hear that I had finally caught up joined the call. After greeting him, he was quick to inform me that Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk, had passed away earlier that month at 54 years old. From there, I remember asking him several questions like, are you kidding? How old was he and how did it happen? But what I recall most vividly was feeling this pit in my stomach and needing to take off my headset and sit down for a bit. Honestly, this behavior felt melodramatic to me even at the time. It's a feeling that only grew later that evening as I found myself shedding a few tears over his passing. And so I asked myself, why was I crying over some guy who I had never met, conversed with, or shit even seen a picture of? Was I that obsessed with his work? And sure, you can chalk it up to human empathy, but despite how I've portrayed myself in past videos, I don't cry that easily. This guy had to have meant something to me for this to happen, so the question is, what did happen? Was the pandemic just making me stupid? Wait a minute. The pandemic was happening during this time, wasn't it? Everyone was trapped inside, all of my classes were online, and the few times I did go out were spent far away from other people. And for little old extrovert me, playing Halo online with my buddies every evening wasn't exactly enough social interaction to suit my needs for 2 years. Basically, it was hard, as I'm sure it was for most of you. And going back to Berserk, I found that a lot of the emotions I was feeling at the time can be tied into this wonderful story. Guts lives a life full of hardship. Every day he deals with a cruel hand dealt to him through no fault of his own. It's ceaseless, unrelenting, and it affects just about every aspect of his lifestyle. Yet through it all, the man keeps going. He is the struggler, a name many fans have taken on themselves as a way to stand in solidarity against whatever life has to throw at them. It's very wholesome. And listen, I agree that tying a fictional story into a real-world event it wasn't made to address is stupid, but that's not my point. I'm saying that whether I knew it or not, I found myself among the so-called strugglers. I found solace in the tenaciousness of this absolute tank of a man, always getting back up, clawing his way through every encounter, and somehow, some way, coming out the other side with companions he can trust in a life that's worth living. Especially at the time, I feel like that's just what I needed to hear, and that's why I believe I felt genuine sorrow when Miura passed away. I was unaware at the time, but I did emotionally connect with his work and felt deeply appreciative towards him for making it. This is just one of an infinite number of circumstances that can deepen your relationship with a piece of media, drawing you ever closer to the very blurry line that marks the point of obsession. But let's make that line a little clearer, shall we? We're gonna travel back in time to when I was truly obsessed with a piece of media, and in order to tell this story right, you'll have to excuse me while I go grab a more suitable host. Hey guys, it's me when I was 9 years old. Let's talk about Animal Crossing. City Folk for the Wii in particular, as that was my introduction to this series and my detroduction to my 9-year-old social life. I get a pass on grammar for this section because I am 9. I don't think I can recall ever being so invested and present in a virtual world before. When I play this game, I am the guy on the screen. I'm catching all the bugs, donating all the fossils, and pretending to understand how turnips work. I don't even know what a turnip is. I put on a me mask to make my character look maybe 5% more like me. I fill my house with stuff I want in my real life home. And most embarrassingly, you know how you get letters from your mom in the mail every now and again? Well, I just kind of assume they're from my actual mom, so I cherish them and keep them in my inventory forever. The hourly tracks that play when I'm regularly on the game have been permanently burned into my memory. I always recall the 8 PM track the most because that was my bedtime when I was a kid. I mean, right now. So whenever this song plays, that means I have a few minutes to wrap up whatever I'm doing before I am ushered off to bed by my dictator parents who only want what's best for me. Fucking gross. And again, in the same way that I personify many aspects of this game, I always take this track as the game saying goodbye for the day, and it carries this very peaceful and bittersweet tone that's become very special to me. I'm sure 13 years from now I'll be using it all the time in videos for that YouTube channel I'm gonna make that's gonna have like 4 million subscribers at that time. Right? And of course, there's always some degree of separation. In the back of my head, I am aware that I am playing a video game, but it's still the closest I've ever come to living vicariously through a piece of media. Now you might think to yourself, well duh, it's a damn video game, of course you're putting yourself in the shoes of the main character. But dude, something about this game just hits a certain way. This feeling of complete and total immersion is way more rare for me than you might think. Like if I were to start up a new game in Stardew Valley right now, I would dye my hair green, cover my clothes in piss, call myself Dr. Dinkledick, and do nothing but mine, fish, and brew alcohol all day. The way I played this game, I think could be classified as obsession. It was basically all I did with my free time for a good while. I thought about it all the time while doing completely unrelated activities. School. It was definitely a mindset that captured what I was at the time. An immature kid without a care in the world who just wanted to do stuff he thought was fun. Whether or not this was healthy is a little beyond my knowledge. Mask off, I'm not actually 9 anymore, so unfortunately I don't remember a lot, nor am I qualified to evaluate that phase of my life, but I can say that what I do remember is nothing but happy memories. Still, I don't think that's enough for us to all come together and say, hell yeah. Getting super into a piece of media, that is objectively great. So let's rethink this and use a more recent example this time, hopefully one that has a good message that can tie this whole video together nicely. Oh, this ought to be good. So I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks this, but there's a bit of an expectation for a truly great anime that doesn't really exist for other pieces of media. It seems to me like everyone's favorite show changed them in some way, affected the way they see the world, that kind of stuff. And I suppose that makes sense for a medium that is super into having its characters learn life lessons and grow as time goes on. Like, remember recently when everyone in the anime community was going on and on about how they have no enemies? That's a perfect example. Watching Vinland Saga made them realize that compassion is actually way cooler than violence. Meanwhile, you look at a different medium like Western television and you just have people saying stuff like this. Man, Walter is such a badass in season 5 of Breaking Bad. Then you have Walking Dead fans like, bro, Negan is so funny and terrifying. Then you have whatever the hell Game of Thrones fans say, like, I don't know, this sucks. To me, there's a clear difference here, but who knows, I could just be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because I want to justify talking about anime twice in a row in a video that was originally supposed to be more of a general media thing because I am obsessed with this next example and will take any opportunity possible to talk about it, so in a way it's already perfect for this video and I just kind of wasted a few seconds of your time. Whoops. Anyways, when my brother was first getting me into anime back in 2020, the third show we watched together was the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, and I really hated it. I thought the pacing was weird, the characters were uninteresting, the monologues were boring and gave me a headache. The narrative felt intentionally confusing and convoluted with no other purpose than to waste my time. Also, why the hell are there 2 watch orders? Who just broadcasts a show out of order when for the most part it follows a clear chronological progression? I was stunned that this was the same studio that made K-On!, the first show my brother and I watched together. And when he explained that this was the show that put Kyoto Animation on the map, I just didn't believe him. How could I? But as I kept watching, something magical began to happen. I found myself actually looking forward to whatever goofy nonsense the show would put in front of me next. A home movie that's intentionally as terrible as it can possibly be. A dramatization of a bunch of people sitting around and playing a grudge match on some space RTS game. Of course there's Endless 8, which like most people I complained about the entire way through. But after finishing it, I felt almost a sense of pride for soldiering through it and intrigue over the insane premise of it all. I got an I Survived Endless 8 t-shirt for Christ's sake. This is literally the first piece of anime merchandise I ever bought. And most impactfully, this show would do stuff like take Haruhi, a character who's known for being very egotistical and self-serving, and show her dropping everything she's doing for the sake of somebody else by playing the single greatest musical performance in the history of this medium. This is one of my favorite scenes from any piece of media. The more I watched, the more all the elements that initially frustrated me became charming. And to seal the deal, there was Disappearance, the show's sequel movie. Like the main character Kyon, I walked away from the film with the realization that I was having fun the entire time and just didn't realize it. From here, I would go back and rewatch earlier episodes, then notice character developments and little mini arcs that initially hid themselves in these seemingly random and pointless activities. For example, the baseball game wasn't just Nagaru Tanagawa sitting around thinking to himself, fuck it, a story about baseball next. The episode firmly cements the fact that the SOS Brigade is fully at the whim of Haruhi's mood swings, and shows the great lengths they must go to in order to keep her happy, and by extension, the world safe. We get excellent characterization for every brigade member. We see more of how Kyon handles Haruhi's mistreatment of Mikuru. We see Koizumi's subtle offhand approach when it comes to Haruhi, preferring to just fade into the background and let her do whatever. Nagato's blatant use of her powers is hilariously blunt, just like she is, and You can tell I'm a little bit obsessed with this show, and I have been for quite a while. In fact, this is a story that for the most part I've told before. Because like I said, usually when I get obsessed with something, I do what any good YouTuber does and take a doo-doo on cyberspace. 5 times. And yet, even after doing all that, here I am once again to say that I have somehow learned something new about my relationship with this franchise that answers the question I posed at the beginning of the video, because life is hilarious and nonsensical, just like Haruhi. Speaking of which, Haruhi is a character that I've always had a real soft spot for. I think she's well written, entertaining, and she does a great job driving the plot forward for most of the story. But beyond that, I found that the more I think about this show, the more likable she becomes, like personality-wise. But Toda, you might be saying right now, she's a bitch. Yeah, I know. That is what makes this weird. In a quest for understanding, I chased this feeling further by re-examining everything I'd said about the show so far. And while rereading the notes I made for this video, I came across this quote. As the show went on, I became more intrigued by how different and unique it was. It's a feeling similar to the one that Haruhi's always chasing by going after strange happenings and people. That's when it hit me. This was the part of this slab of colored ink that I genuinely admired. Her adventurous spirit. It's something that I've only recently discovered that the two of us share. See, over the last few years, I've noticed that the more new experiences I have, regardless of how scary they may seem at first, have had a profoundly positive impact on me. Eating something new, trying a new hobby, experimenting with a new video format, they all make me, well, happier. I guess it's a little hard to explain, but it's like, oh, you ever see Golden Boy? That is the dog that lives inside me, and it's the same one that Haruhi has as well. You know, I was always raving about how the show expertly puts you in the shoes of Kyon, but now I wonder if I was just relating to the guy because he and Haruhi are two sides of the same coin. One of them is just overwhelmingly energetic and active, while the other is excessively cynical and passive. But if the man's choice at the end of Disappearance is any indication, he loves new and exciting things just as much as the rest of us. I wouldn't have learned this about myself for quite a while if the show didn't put it into context for me. And I certainly wouldn't have this bright beacon of optimism that in a weird way encourages me to continue to be myself if I never got obsessed with this show. I mean, if I'm doing something difficult like True Story, going for a run during a heat wave, there is an actual voice in my head that will go, "Alright bro, I understand, this sucks. But what would Haruhi do?" And that actually worked. I ran way further than I had any right to that day. So yeah, I'd say that the obsession definitely paid off here. And to me, this really showcases the power that being passionate about a piece of media can have. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that me buying the Koizumi body pillow was completely fucking justified, Dad. Now leave me alone. Anyways, the actual point here is that passion is a weapon, and you gotta use it to shoot life in the face. So long as it isn't hurting you or anyone else, go ahead and indulge. You might just get something great out of it. Or you'll just be like me and make a mildly entertaining YouTube video. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to Silent Secondary, Mr. Chocolate Salmon, and Volume Warning,
Shrouded Sun!
and the rest of my wonderful patrons.